On yesterday's program, talking quite a lot about the protests over the weekend. I accidentally got caught up in some of that because I happened to be in central Auckland yesterday morning. But there's been a lot of talk about some of the phrases used, some of the slogans chanted, and some of the response and the reactions from either side of this heated debate. Two politicians, same event. Very different reactions. Joining us on the program now from the Maxim Institute, Jason Heale. Jason, kia ora, good morning. Thanks for your time today.
Good morning, Andrew. Always a pleasure to be here with you, mate.
Didn't see you at the protests, but glad to get your analysis on this. Talking about, I suppose, hate speech, and there's been an accusation that some of the slogans that we used are hateful. Given that it's a protest, I suppose people who have a certain view might find people with the opposite point of view upsetting or annoying, hence the protest. But Is there a line that you can cross here to say, well, yeah, you can have a difference of opinion, you can even yell that annoyingly loud through a megaphone. However, when you're actually inciting violence, this is when we've actually crossed a line into actual hate speech, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. I think the line, like in a society where we have free speech, there is still some speech that's actually illegal. For example, speech that is fraud, for example, or reputational damage, or things like that are actually illegal. So free speech in a society is not unfettered, right? And I think that when it comes to calls for violence, I think that's absolutely right. And that is like speech that results in violence is punishable. So I think, yeah, exactly.
I mean, the slogan in question, and MP for Central Auckland, Chloe Swarbrick, have been called out for this. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And, perhaps she didn't understand the history of this. Perhaps, despite the fact that she was protesting for the rights of Palestinian people, that she didn't Wikipedia that this was one of the key slogans for Hamas. Basically saying we're going to drive the Jewish people out of this piece of geography from the river to the sea, which is the whole nation of Israel. It was a statement of hatred and genocide, but she didn't know it at the time. Is that an excuse?
Yeah, look, that's part of the thing that's really fascinating about this, is that I didn't know is being used as a particular reason for this slogan to be used. I didn't know, or I wasn't aware that it was offensive. But in other situations, slogans like that, that is not a defense when you say something that offends someone. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Oh, well, that doesn't matter. You still offended me. Misgendering's a classic example. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Well, that's no excuse. I'm going to come after you. I'm going to cancel you. I'm going to do whatever. So I would say it is a good reason for me personally, but it hasn't been in the past, has it?
Yeah, I mean, it is the situation where, I mean, hey, I get this in radio a lot. If I say anything on air which offends you or annoys you, then I apologize in advance. Perhaps I should start every show by saying that, because, I mean, hey, in an average show, I'll annoy somebody and they'll send me a text. I'm not going out of my way to annoy them, but I'm also very open to, if somebody says, hey, actually, you may not have understood this, but this is really offensive to me. I'm also happy to go, oh gosh, I had no idea. I'm really sorry about that. I've learnt something today. We've moved forward in a civil society. I will not use that term again. Thank you for helping me to understand.
Exactly. And I think that's sort of what happened, is that there was some discussion afterwards, there was some education, there was an apology, maybe a reluctant one, but it was kind of like the sunlight disinfecting the speech, if you will. Like, she became aware of that. There was a lot of pushback at first. I think there was a lot of defense for it, but then there was an apology, and there was, a civil discussion, and we kind of hopefully moved on from that. And she knows now, and that slogan will hopefully not be used again by her in that sort of setting.
I mean, is that a good thing? Good has been done in this regard, because you could say, well, if she hadn't perhaps inadvertently used this slogan, then there would have been this education process. It certainly wouldn't have hit the media like it did. Perhaps there's a broader understanding of some of the sensitivities of this issue than there was beforehand. Thanks, Chloe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's partly what free speech does, right? Is that it allows you to bring bad ideas out into the light and to discuss them and to debate them and go, actually, this is not something that we agree with. This is not something we want to get behind. This is something that is a bad idea. And so the remedy for a bad idea, people always have said for a long time, is discussion. It's not censorship, because people can see it and they go, it doesn't make any sense. That's ridiculous. Why would I believe that? And then that view is kind of shunted out.
There is something to be said about the mob, though, and I'm certainly not pushing back against the right of free speech to protest on issues that people have passionate views about. This is part of a informed participatory democracy. However, if somebody next to you is yelling something and it's kind of catchy and it rhymes, you're not necessarily going to bust out a thesaurus to get into the finer meanings of the words. You're just going to say what they're saying, because that's what happens in a mob, right? I mean, there's good things about that. There's solidarity in that. There's people taking a stand on important issues, but there's an ugly side to mobs sometimes.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. They call it the thug's veto for a reason. They call it mob justice or mob rule, and that's not something that people want to see. Or the madness of crowds, as well, as another saying. So there, like you say, there are positives to that. There's a sense that people are heard when they're able to protest. There's a sense of people being aware that they're not alone in what they are doing. There's a sense that there's a cause, there's something to work towards, but also, it heightens your. It's like going to a concert, which I'm told you were at. You were caught up in over the weekend as well, Andrew.
Oh yeah, no, busy weekend for me. Yeah, it was all happening downtown, and I was in the throng of it.
But there's this energy, this rush with the crowds that you can get carried away, and I think it is something we need to be wary of. Yeah,
getting to the point of this, I suppose. I mean, free speech, good general principle. But should there be limits to that? And should the government, or should a government-sponsored branch of bureaucracy get to say what's in and what's out in terms of what is acceptable hate speech and unacceptable hate speech? What is just communication and dialogue, and what is disinformation, for example?
Yeah. Well, I think when you give someone or some department maybe the license to say this speech is forbidden, verboten, you can't use these words, as opposed to allowing society itself to decide those things, that's a really dangerous kind of door to crack open, because the definition of what's offensive changes these days really quickly, right? You've seen celebrities get cancelled for something they said 5-6 years ago on Twitter that was a joke, but now it's deeply offensive, and they're directors fired from movies, actors can't do things, can't work in Hollywood because of things they've said.
And to use the Swarbrick defense, not only did they not know it was offensive, it wasn't offensive when they said it.
At the time. Exactly. Exactly. So I think when you give someone the mandate to say, you define this lexicon of offensive words and we can't use these words, well, unfortunately, that changes. And so next year, you might find that lexicon is old, and you use, and there's words that now are acceptable that weren't, or weren't that are, and so
I mean, you make a good point. It's not just that we need to keep up with this ever-changing lexicon, but this can be used retroactively for something which we said, which at the time the culture wasn't rounding people up about, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So not only today, but hey, let's go back through all of your social media posts and find out if you said something that's on this list that we came up with. And yeah, it's a dangerous thing to do. I think discussion, debate, and society settling on words. I mean, we have words that you don't say today because they're offensive, but it's not because someone told us. It's because we, as a society, realized that, hey, this is offensive to this group of people, and I'm not going to use it.
Yeah. Yeah, we decide to use words which aren't hurtful or hateful to other people, and hey, we're open to the education process. I mean, in the old days, of course, the next step would be book burning. But who reads books nowadays? Honestly, maybe we should do phone burning, but that wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea.
I was going to say phone smashing or something like that. Yeah.
Hey, appreciate your insight on this topic. Now, the article that you've written about this is going to be posted on Maxim a little bit later in the week, I understand. But thank you very much for joining us in this important conversation. Thanks for being on the program today.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Always a pleasure.